who should I trust, Because lots of people in China, they will talk about, the Buddha come to China, Eastern world to save the people in the East. And the Jesus gone to the West to save the people in the West, Western people. So they're all the same, they just different jobs in the different areas. My name is John, and I was born in Shanghai. And my childhood has been quite a bit mixture in like living in different places because my parents actually working in a railway construction company, and they're both doctors, but the company, they have their own hospitals. So I was born in Shanghai, and then I live with my grandparents till about 4, and then I went to live with my parents, and then because they build the railways, so the company actually moving along, so they don't really have good schools to come with the company. So we used to have a classroom with, I was like the youngest, 5 years old up to like 16 years old. So they decided, for the education purpose, so I was sent back to Shanghai to do my primary schools. And then my grandpa got illness, passed away, so there was no one looking at me, and then I have to go back to stay with them. So my life was a bit like that, back and forth between rural China and Shanghai. And then to the time when the country started to open up, and my dad decided to come to Australia and just to see what is going on outside the China. And at the time, I was by myself pretty much because my mom was like living in the other side of the city. And until 1992, and that's the time when we actually have the what they call the family reunion visa was granted by the Australian government. And so I and my mum had the opportunity to come to Australia to visit my dad. It was on a temporary visa, yeah. So in terms of Christ, come to Christ, in China we are brought up as, mainly because it's a communist country, so we're brought up as atheists. But there's always something inside me which is trying to find out what's the meaning of life and what's this whole thing is about. And I still remember, I think I was only about probably 5, 6 years old, and suddenly I came to the realization people will die. And I went to ask my mom, why people have to die, what happens, when people die, what's after that? And she couldn't answer me, and she was trying to brush the, things away, basically said, you have a, bright future ahead of you. Why you're so young, and there's not something you should worry about, at the time. So that was probably the first time I've come to questioning, the meaning of life, but didn't have a, answer. So that thing has been put away. So, I was doing the things I, supposed to do until at the time when we were waiting for the visa to come to Australia. That was think I was around about 20 years old. And because there was such long process to get the things done. And at the time I was finished high school, and because I have to decide whether I need to go to university or go to overseas, because at the time the government policy, you can't really do both. You have to decide which you want to go. So in the end I have to give up university and just come to Australia. And I didn't realize the whole waiting period was about almost 2 years. And because we have to wait, and I got this, because when you're in the school, you don't really have time to think about other things. You just do whatever you have to do. But when you have a large amount of free time by yourself, literally like doing nothing, stay at home, the meaning of life, that kind of questions come back to me again. The meaning of life, the death, the afterlife, all these kind of things come back to me, because it's a question that hasn't been solved. It's kind of been, put it away. And until then, I thought, maybe it's time to think about that. And because we brought up as pretty much atheist culture, but the religion never goes away from the culture, and it's always there. Whether you believe superstitions or Buddhism or Taoism or even Confucianism and all that stuff, and there's always something there. And
so, what would have been the primary religion that you grew up in?
I would say just really just atheist religion, because we don't really, from the school, we were told, the pretty much the Marxism, everything is material. Besides the material, there's nothing else. That's what we're being told. But from down to your heart, you're thinking about, okay, if that's true, then what's the whole meaning behind it? Why we are here? Why I live this life, and then when I die, and everything just perishes, and why I should do all this if at the end of the day you come with the same result. What's the whole meaning of working harder, study hard, and get a better life, and then you just perish one day. And because for your lifespan, these 70, 80 years, whatever, or even shorter, comparing to the time of universe, you can pretty much, it's meaningless in comparison. So, and that's always have a big impact on me, because I thought, if you can't really find the meaning of life, then you don't really know what to do. You kind of go with the flow with the rest of societies. You just have to do whatever everyone's doing. But then deep inside, I thought, if that problem hasn't been solved, then you don't really have a purpose, like what you actually have to do, because I'm kind of person, just these kind of questions just intrigues me. I I couldn't understand why people don't think about that. Some people, they just say, oh, this is just life. Life is just like that. Why do you think that? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go find some answers. So at the time,
So at this point, John,
I
have you
was
moved
still
to
in
Australia
China.
or
Not
still in
yet.
China?
No, still in China. I was basically doing nothing every day, and was meeting friends, chatting and drinking, and just had a really good time. And that was the time actually China started to open up, and there's a lot of Western books coming to China and also got translated. So the first things I encountered, I remember, was all the psychology books from Freud. And then I move on to the more philosophical books and all that stuff. That was actually quite popular at the time, people gone to the Western philosophy and the psychologies and all that stuff. And I couldn't find any meaning, of life out of that. It seems more questions was asked, more problems was issued rather than actually answer what the meaning of life is. So I realized, the philosophy not meant to actually answer you the questions. It's rather prompt you to ask the questions. So that makes me shift away from philosophy to religion. And in China, you don't really have lots of choices for religion because, like of Confucianism, it's not really a religion because he's more talking about morals of this life. He's not talking about afterlives. And then you have the Taoism. It's more about trying to create some kind of, forever medicine, trying to live longer, that kind of thing, which is not really for me. So the only thing left is Buddhism, pretty much, So I was into Buddhism, read lots of Buddhism script and all that stuff. I was also, at the time, I encountered Bible as well. I read Bible and it seems pretty, straightforward, the stories. I can feel there's some kind of thing behind it, the behind the story. They're trying to tell you something, but I couldn't grasp what it is. And so there was a mixture of things, but it's more into Buddhism because all my schoolmates, they are pretty much into Buddhism as well. So we have like a little, group and we talk about all that. It explains to you very well, how the world is, how human is, how we end up like this, and all that. And then it also explained very well about the meaning of life, and the afterlife, everything, the whole lot, that's the difference between religion and philosophy stuff. One is just keep asking questions. The other one give you an answer, basically give you a solution. But they come to the Buddhism. The interesting thing is it can see the problems very well, but when they come to solutions, they have so many different ways. The Buddha says there's 80,000 plus ways to go find your Buddhahood. And everyone's going to be different. And that's the hardest part I found. There's no clear direction. There's no cut line. So, okay, you should do this and that, because no one's actually agreed on anything for this, 2,000 years. Everyone see the problems, but everyone approach the problem differently. Everyone, has a different kind of way, and that comes with all the different Buddhism. Inside of Buddhism, they have so different styles, and also. So that was pretty much it before I came to Australia. And then after waiting for almost 2 years, and the visa suddenly got issued, and I was just on the flight, and I came to Australia. When the first week I came to Australia, and because I was trained as an artist, and the first thing you come to this new place is you think about how you're going to survive. You have to think about what kind of jobs and all that stuff you can find. And there was actually a friend of mine. He was actually in the same art school as I was, and he attended this Chinese church. So my relative at the time was also in that church and said, "Oh, you come to this church and meet this person, so you guys can make friends, and so you might find some help, and how to, come to this new country and how to survive." So that was actually the primary reason I came to church first week when I arrived in Australia.
So it was to make connections in Australia and to maybe find a way to get some work. Is that sort of how you
Yeah,
saw it?
because at the time my visa was like a family reunion visa. So at the time when I arrived in Australia, I was already 21 years old. So I was kind of half independent, half like a dependent. At the time, my same age, peers, they are pretty much graduate from their middle of universities. I was like basically did nothing in the last 2 years, so I need to find something to do, and the only skill I have is to the art side, doing some artworks and all that stuff. So I went to this church because I want to meet this person to see what the opportunities. But the thing is, he wasn't there that week when I went there, and so I met all the other people, and it was a Chinese church, and mainly people from mainland China. So we all speak the same Mandarin, so we can understand each other. Then I was encountered by these two people in the church, and they just say, "Oh, do you want to know about Jesus?" I said, "Okay, tell me about it." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I read the Bible, and I know, that there's Jesus, there's the miracles and all that stuff he did." And then, but I said, I'm not fully understand, what this whole thing is about. And then, so they basically preaching the gospel to me and asked me, do you want to believe it? He's the savior, and he died for our sin. We are sinners. And when we come to the sinners, I don't really have a big issue about it, because in Buddhism, you're talking about the sin people have sinned. People have these sin issues all their life because the bad things they did in their past lives and the bad things they did in this life, and all accumulate. It's kind of become a result of that. So, but eventually, you sort of understand it, you accept it. You're a sinners. But when you go a bit deeper later on into Christianity, you realize that the sin in Buddhism is actually a bit different from the sin they're talking about in the Bible. But anyway, and I don't really have an issue about that. I thought, yeah, everyone's sinner, where everyone needs to, be saved, and then they asked me, do you want to believe in Jesus? Because Jesus is gonna save you, and he will wash away all your sins. Then become a problem for me, because in Buddhism, Buddhas also save people. Okay, and that's why there's one particular type of Buddhism. They basically call on this particular Buddha's name, because this Buddha will have the will to save them. So that's one methodology, basically. And so they will keep asking me, do you want to believe? I say, how do I know, and who should I trust, Because lots of people in China, they will talk about, the Buddha come to China, Eastern world, to save the people in the East. And the Jesus gone to the West to save the people in the West, Western people. So they're all the same, They just different jobs in the different areas, and save different people. And then the brother and sister, they open the Bible for me, and I still remember. It was in Acts chapter 4, verse 12. And they said, here's a Bible verse you can actually read. I said, there's salvation in none other, for neither is there any other name under heaven that is given among men by which we must be saved. So that was the verses I was fully impacted by. The reason for that is because in Buddhism, as I mentioned before, there's 80,000 plus ways to go to heaven, become Buddha. But I have never seen anything like this. Out of all the books I've read, doesn't really matter, psychologies or philosophy books or the Chinese cultural stuff, religion stuff, Taoism, Buddhism, whatever, Confucianism. I have never seen anything like this so absolute. Say, this is it, okay? That's the only way. And when you think about the human wisdom, when you think about human writing things, in Chinese culture, we don't push yourself to the limit. You give yourself a bit space, okay? You don't say something, just draw a clear line. You don't do that, because in that way, you don't give yourself any space, because you don't have space to back up. And with the Bible, you say something like this, like none other, like there's nothing else besides this. It's so absolute. And a lot of people didn't realize that. When you say something so absolute, you only have two choices, black and white. Okay, there's no gray areas. Either this is true or this is false. If this is false, the entire book is a big question mark. And that's why I don't get a lot of people say, okay, the Bible is good, there's lots of good stuff in there, and it's just like any other, moral books. They didn't really read carefully what the Bible is talking about, okay? Because the things Bible talking about, you don't see it in other book. If someone says something like this, you either treat that person as crazy or super, super crazy arrogant, or something is fundamentally wrong, or something is true, okay? So that was the sentence, that was the verses impact me, because I don't see that in Buddhism, okay? Buddhism, you don't say things like that. You say, oh, yeah, it's good, we are in the right direction, okay? Which way, doesn't really matter, okay? You just go feel it, okay? You have your own feelings, you sort it out. But with the Bible, it says, no, this is it. That's only one. There's no other, okay?
And so, because it's an absolute, and like you're saying, culturally that sort of didn't really fit with what you'd been brought up with in terms of absolutes and not leaving space for a maybe. Why do you think, for you, it resonated that this must be true?
I think it's a simple logic, because if you see something black and white, which is you don't really see very often in religion, in philosophies, they all proper questions. They gave you a relatively answer. That's a typical case, because if you say something absolute, you'll be very easily get attacked or targeted. People very easy to pick you. Say, oh, okay, you say that, then how are you going to prove this, and that? If you can't prove this, how can you say that? Because you narrow yourself, you corner yourself, okay? Either you have absolute reason, otherwise you'll be easily, people will say, okay, you're just being, bluffing, you didn't think through. And with the Bible, that has been there for, at least we know, it's over 2,000 years. And It impacts me because when they say that, it has a power. It's a power of authority. It's like I don't really care. It's like the law. Say, okay, if you go run through a red light, I'm going to find you. Okay, it's just like that, and it's there. Okay, it doesn't really care how you feel it. You say, no, that's not fair. No, I don't think that is true. I don't agree with it. Go for it. Okay, you run it, you get a ticket. Okay, it's just like that. And I found that there's lots of stuff in Bible, lots of sentences like this. Like Jesus, like a typical one would say, he will say himself, so I'm the way, the truth, the life. Who the hell are you gonna say that? Even Buddha's not saying that. Buddha says, I'm a teacher, okay? And you have to go find your own way, okay? I maybe can help you, but you have to do it yourself.
So it was the authority of Jesus' words that struck you.
It's the authority of the words. It's this absoluteness. You basically have to think, okay? Either this whole thing is big, it's the biggest scam in the world, and somehow this, I don't know, 1.2 billion people just gone crazy and believing this stuff, or there's some truth in it, because it's so black and white, not like any other religions. It always, relative, so it's a bit easy for you to just not, just because it's not absolute, so you can't take it, so you can't break that up, say, okay, this is something wrong with it. With these kind of things, there's an authority behind it, say it, because it doesn't really care how you respond to it. It just say, okay, I've just said it like this, okay, whether you accept it or not, I've said it, okay. You can say the whole thing is a lie, fine, okay, but you can't say, okay, I don't accept Jesus, but I don't think it's the savior, but I really like his teaching, I think he did lots of good stuff. I think he's a good person, but I don't necessarily agree with lots of things he said. I think logically that doesn't make sense. Either this person is a big lie, or it's true, okay? So, because I'm from the Buddhism background, I can see the difference between the text, and you don't say things like that, as simple as that in Buddhism, okay? It's like this is it, okay? They will tell you some absolute things, like the things, you're having issues, you have problems and all that. But when you come to the way to get saved, when you have a clear methodology, you don't do things like that simply, It's almost like you're going to doctor, a good doctor will tell you, no, you need to do this is to get your problem fixed, okay? And the bad doctor will say, oh yeah, it's very hard to say. Okay, we don't know. Okay, maybe you should try this. That might be work. Yeah, maybe you should try that one either. Yeah, that might be helpful as well. But exactly, but you ask that doctor, so just tell me which one I should do. It's very hard to tell. It's a bit like that. That's the difference. And this one basically says, you're gonna take this. If you don't take this, you die. Either you take it or not. Okay, so that's the primary reason I was like overwhelmed. And the person still asked me, so do you want to believe it? And I can still remember I was having internal struggle. So, oh, come on. Your first time come to church, someone asks you to believe in Jesus and you just accept it. And then there's another voice inside of me saying, no, this might be your only chance, and give yourself a reason why you shouldn't accept it. No, I can't find anything, because it's this way of, giving the way they describe things in the Bible. It's it's kind of so different. You can feel the authority behind it. There's something there. Okay. So in the end, the third time they asked me, I said yes, I will. So I went through the prayer to acknowledge I'm the sinner. I need Jesus' salvation and all that. So that was my first time encounter, and then after that they sent me to what they called the beginners class. So I need to catch up. What's this whole thing is about? Because the talk was only like 15-20 minutes. So yeah, and then I got baptized after 3 months after finished the beginner's lesson, and then and I remember I was baptized during the Easter in that year. Yeah,
Fantastic. And so after that experience, after that time of salvation and being baptized, what has God done since? What has He talked to you about? How have you encountered His presence since that time?
Oh well. So the biggest difficulties I found in Chinese culture comparing to Christianity is the Chinese religion. It's always philosophical. That's why lots of people say Buddhism is philosophy. It's all to do with thinking. Same with Confucianism. It's about how you purify your thoughts, and it's about how you, once you purify your thoughts, you improve your deeds, and you live a good life, and then the more good things you do, the better results you'll get, because there's a correlation between the good deeds and the good results. That's what the Buddhism is all about, And I don't fully understand. Christianity is actually not so much about good deeds. It's actually more about building up a relationship with someone. And I found that is very different. In Chinese culture, I found that that's probably one of the most challenging things, because there's a lot of Chinese Christians. They so all know like the gospel. They kind of accept it as well. But they never actually truly built a relationship with Christ, with God. Their religion usually very easily just in the mind, okay, in their thinking, and they think they know the secret to go to heaven, by knowing the gospel. But and I think that's something I found it's hard. But eventually, when you read more Bible, you came to this realization, and especially through worship and prayer. Because when you worship, when you pray, there's someone there you sort of worship to. Okay, you didn't realize at the start. So what I'm actually doing. Okay, why I'm doing this, and but you just do it. Okay, and the prayer is hard because you think, oh, okay. In Buddhism, you have to chant the verses, because the more you do all that, that's the good deeds. You're not really praying to Buddha, you know what I mean? Some people they do, but they think that that's also good deeds, okay? But you're not really building a personal relationship. But with Christianity, you pray to God, you actually have to believe, He's actually going to help you, or He's going to actually listen to you. And that, I found it's hard to, turn your mind around a bit, especially with when you're new Christians, you don't really have experienced anything yet. So you think, okay, I'm actually all right. Just saying something to the air, is actually normal. So, but as you progress and as you know more and you experience more, and then you become realize that. So personally, I found that is always a journey for me, and I'm still learning more. So
That's good. And
yeah.
is there anything in particular, any encounters or experiences that you've had with God directly that you would like to
um,
share?
I think mainly is prayer, and how the sometimes when you read the Bible, I didn't know, God sometimes can use Bible to actually tell things, and it's not, happen often, but it happens, and sometimes he will let things come to you, and sometimes he will send someone to give you some suggestions and all that. As I mentioned before, the first thing for me come to this new country is to survive. Language is the first big hurdle. You literally just have to pick up from zero. Even we learn English in China, but it's not really learning a language. It's like learning a subject. You don't really know how to use it. So everything have to start from scratch, and I think that's probably the most challenging thing for me is I didn't realize how hard it is still now, to survive as an artist, and not, it's hard in China even, and now you're come to, totally, a new country, and and I, later I realized how difficult it was to become artist, professional artists here as well. So, but somehow God has His way to lead you through all that, all these years, and then you see how He is faithful, and He knows you better than you know yourself. He knows you, what you're good at, and He knows what the opportunities are there, and He will lead you there, and that is amazing. So, and that kind of things, there's also other things in life, but this is one thing I think particularly impact me, because I, I didn't have, lots of confidence, how I gonna survive here. That's probably my major issues, and as what Bible says, He's your fortress. He's your the one to go to, and truly, the one, looking for Him will never, needs anything. It's like the Psalm 23, and it is true. It's a long journey. It's not something you pray and then, bread falling from the sky. It's not quite like that. One thing I found is, God is not a God you pray, I'm going to win a Tesla the next day, and everything will be fine. God is the God, He will train you up to make you capable, and so you can earn that much money, and by your own ability and effort. At the same time, you'll be part of the society and helping others. That's what His plan is. But sometimes we always want something quick, something effortless. But no, God wants something you put effort in. He wants to change you. He wants to train you up, and He wants you to build up your characters. So, and that takes time. And sometimes people want something quick. Even in the church, we'll say, "Oh, yeah, we have this and that issues, and Pray, God fix that for me, There's nothing wrong with it, okay? Because God says you can always pray. But one thing I think, when we pray, and God always wants us to build up more than trying to fix the problems. Because the miracle is not for fixing problems. All the miracles in the Bible are not fixing problems, because your problems will never end as long as you live, okay? When you fix that problem, you'll have a next problem, okay? The miracle is for us to believe,
Yeah,
to trust
that's
Him.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. Well, thanks for sharing, John.
That's
I
okay,
just
my
have
pleasure.
one more question for you. What would you say to someone who might be watching or listening who has similar questions to you when you were around that age of 20, when you were growing up as an atheist and then sort of looked at Buddhism and other religions? What would you say? Excuse me. What would you say to someone who might be having those questions around religion and what's true and what's not true, and who's looking for the truth?
I think, personally, as what Bible says, in our heart, there's a space God has left for eternity. And I think everyone's looking for that. And doesn't really matter what culture, society you're from, what race you're from, and it's always there. But sometimes we just ignore it, and sometimes we just busy with other things, and we think, maybe it's not time to think about it. But somehow that always bothers me. Okay, and that's why I need to find an answer. And from the things I've seen so far, I think Christianity is most convincing, and not only from the text, from the Bible, but also from my own experience. And you just have to experience it, and you have to, because it's a religion of not about thoughts, it's a religion about relationship. And when you build up this relationship, you truly understand, why Bible asks you to believe, because that's the way to make the contact. Something invisible, but it's there, and you just have to experience it, and and He will give you all the answers.